customers may not fully appreciate the power of Chat GPT, right? But a lot of startups would be working on what they can potentially do with Chat GPT. Right? So if you're in touch with the startup world, you get a sense of what's happening in that world. Within no time, we expanded, I remember, from 0 offices to maybe 30 sales offices, from 0 salespeople to 400 salespeople, because we figured we had got something right.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Chat Masala. Super excited to have with us Hitesh Oberoi, who is the co-promoter, MD, and CEO of InfoEdge, which is responsible for so many household brands that you may know about. Naukri.com, Jeevan Sati, 99 Acres, and many others. We're going to have a fantastic discussion on tech, entrepreneurship, and some life. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me,
Hitesh. Alrighty, so we'd love to start off. Before IIT and IIM and all the companies, what were you like as a teenager, and what were some of the activities that shaped you and built a lot of the skills that you have today?
So Rahul, I was born in a middle class family, grew up in West Delhi. Luckily for me, my father got me into one of the best schools in Delhi at that time, St. Columbus. So in school, I got exposed to all kinds of kids. There were some very smart kids, some kids who were very good at sports, some who were very good at academics, some who were into music and quizzing and debating. We had all types. And we also had some kids from the economically not so well-off families, because this was a Christian missionary school, and they had sort of, they wanted to sort of encourage these kids as well. So life was very simple in those days. We used to go to school, come back. I wanted to do well academically, so I used to study quite a bit. And we didn't have too many other things to do at that time. There were no computers. There was no internet. There were no video games. So evenings were mostly.
Are these things you would do if you were a teenager now?
Of course. I mean, life today is very different. Back then, I remember we had the Asian Games in '82 in India, and that's when we got a color TV in our house.
82. Okay.
82, and then after that we got a VCR. So we could watch what we could watch
high-tech
movies.
VCRs, yeah.
Right, but evenings were basically spent with friends. So for 2 hours every day, I would go out in the evenings and play a game of football or cricket, and then hang out with friends and chat about a lot of things. So it was a lot of work and a lot of fun, and with friends and a lot of play. That's how it was in those days.
No, but I think that's very interesting, because there's a lot of research into unstructured time, and that's something that kids don't always get these days. But perhaps, would you say that during those play sessions, you developed a lot of the leadership, teamwork skills that you use today? Is there a connection there, perhaps?
No, absolutely. See, because I think I used to look forward to that time. I remember I used to come home from school, but both my parents were working. So I was pretty much on my own. And, I used to look forward to the clock striking 5 p.m. because that's when I would go out and we would...
But you were so self-disciplined. Okay, you would finish your homework and only at 5 go out?
Yeah, because it used to be hot, and most kids would come out at 5 o'clock in the evening, and that's where we would all get together and play a game, and then hang out and discuss a variety of things. See, there was no internet, so there was no way of knowing what was happening in the rest of the world. Yeah, we were completely disconnected. We had no idea, of what the world was.
Sort of things you discussed on a daily basis?
Of course. So while playing the sport, we used to play. There used to be lots of fights, right? And on small things. And then, like I said, it was a middle class sort of colony. Most kids wanted to do well academically. Most of us wanted to become engineers or doctors or whatever at that time. So we used to discuss how to go about those things. And we used to talk about all the new things that were happening around us. Like I said, the color TVs were new, the VCRs are new. So some of those things, we used to all, like video games had just started.
Okay.
So every now and then you would get a guy who would get access to a video game, and then we used to also discuss cricket a lot, because cricket was the big thing in those days. Of course, there was no IPL, there was not, but there were very few avenues of entertainment. And I remember...
were there ODIs back then, or was it
ODIs had just started. ODIs started. Yeah. Okay. So, but India used to go overseas, and the test matches are very big. 5-day test matches. Now nobody watches them.
So 80s, this was the time of Gavaskar.
Yeah, Gavaskar,
Okay,
Kapil
okay.
Dev. 83 is when India won the
Yes,
first World Cup.
exactly.
It was a very
Got the
weak
movie.
team at that time. And I remember India used to go to West Indies to play cricket. And we used to be glued to our transistors. We used to listen to cricket commentary on our transistors.
Oh, wow.
Because there was no
Oh,
telecast.
Okay.
And then after a while, when we got color TVs, etc. in our house, and the quality of broadcasting improved, and one day international got reduced, then India used to go to Australia. And the matches were telecast early in the morning. And we would get up at 5 a.m. in the morning to watch cricket. And see, there wasn't much to do. There was no satellite TV even.
Oh,
Forget about, there was only Doordarshan. Right? And therefore, we had one movie on a Sunday evening and 2 Chitrahars during the week. And that's all we had for entertainment. And therefore, it was all about going out and meeting friends and spending time with them and playing outdoors. Unfortunately, that's not what a lot of kids end up doing nowadays, but that's how life was really.
But the lesson is work hard, play hard.
Yeah.
I think that's there. So then you got to IIT Delhi. How did your passions evolve through college?
What I realized in school was that I was no good at sports. I mean, I was good at sport, but not good enough, right? I was not good enough with,
Much better at other things.
I was better at I was good at math, right? I was reasonably fascinated by science in my class 9th grade and 10th grade. And we had some very good teachers who inspired us at that time. And like I said, the whole sort of atmosphere at home and everywhere, wherever I sort of went was around, listen, if you want to do well in life, you should become a doctor or you should become an engineer. And, or at, worst case, become a chartered accountant. Right? That's how, at least that's how we
Maybe a lawyer.
That's how we were brainwashed, in some sense at that time. And and since I was good at math and science, I figured it was IIT, which I should be aspiring for. Yeah. And luckily for me, the colony I grew up in, every year we had one kid who would sort of go to IIT from that colony. And not just go to IIT, we would have one kid in the top 100 every year. And, I got to know those kids and I sort of understood.
I'm just curious, was it self-study or did you join one of these training centers that we have today?
So I took the JEE in 1990. Right? So there were no training centers at that time. But we had correspondence courses available. So there were 2 sort of players who were very famous at that time. There was Agarwal classes and there were brilliant tutorials. And they had these correspondence sort of, they used to basically teach you they used to send you material by correspondence. They used to mail the stuff to you, snail mail.
Wow, okay.
And physical mail, right? Because
like textbooks?
There was no email. There are notes and textbooks.
Got it.
And then you would start, and there were lots of practice questions, and you would do those questions, and that's how you would prepare for it.
But where's the course? They would send you material,
They would send us
but
material.
would there be any interaction?
No interaction.
Oh, okay.
No interaction. Wow. So they would send you tough questions, and they would send you some notes, and then you were supposed to do those questions, and they would send you answer booklets. That's how we prepared for IIT. Around the time I took the JEE, the first physical coaching centers came up.
Got it. Okay.
Right? And then they became popular over a period of time.
Interesting. Alrighty. And what activities did you do in both undergrad and grad school? And what were your thoughts on your future at that time? And how do you make decisions about your future course of action?
So, I made it to IIT. I did very well in the JEE. I got into computer science, which was supposed to be the sort of, the stream to get into those days. Though I was not particularly excited about computer science because I had dabbled in computers in school in my class 9 and 10th grade. And while I liked computers, the idea of, sitting in front of a computer and programming for long hours didn't really appeal to me. But it was, so for some reason I wanted to sort of, I was a hardware buff, I wanted to sort of build things, right? But because I got a very good rank, people pushed me to take computer science, which is what I ended up doing.
And nothing has changed.
At IIT. And, but let me tell you, see, for me, IIT was very hard actually. I made it to IIT, but it was a tough time. I took my time settling down. The computer science sort of branch is very competitive. And IIT is all about relative grading. Right, and it was a very competitive place, a very hard place. And for the first time, I was staying away from home because even though luckily I was in Delhi, so I could go home on weekends.
Got it.
But I had a tough time, so I didn't have to get too much time to think about too many things at IIT because I was a little stressed out. And but towards the end, I realized, a lot of the kids in computer science would, even at that time, went overseas for their masters. Right? They used to get scholarships and then go overseas. Nobody could afford a foreign education. They couldn't afford to pay for it themselves, but they would get these scholarships in the not so well-known universities. Some of the best ones made it to the best-known universities, but others also made it to some universities overseas. And I realized during my 4 years, that somewhere in the middle, I realized that computer science was not going to be, but you couldn't change your stream at IIT. You had to, because I had chosen computer science, I had to major in computer science. There weren't too many options, and so I graduated in computer science. But towards the end of, I decided to sort of pursue a career in management, and then I took the CAT, and then I made.
Did you go straight from IIT to IIM?
Straight from IIT to, and back in those days there weren't too many opportunities actually. Also in India, so India was just opening up. This is '94. TCS and Wipro had just started hiring. Indian IT services companies are beginning to happen. So most kids who graduated from IIT, even at that time, they either went overseas, or they did an MBA, or they applied for civil services.
Did you consider going abroad, and if so, why did you decide to?
I did consider going abroad for a while, but I decided against it because of two reasons. One, I just felt I should be in India. Right, and two, like I said, I didn't see myself pursuing.
Follow your heart, intuition. Yeah,
I didn't see myself pursuing a career in computer science, right? And so it was not the done thing to get into management courses overseas at that time, because I think that required you to have some experience and work experience. So nobody used to apply for a management program overseas. People used to apply for a master's in computer science. So I didn't want to pursue that, and I wanted to stay in India. And then I heard about, and then I came across a few people who, a bunch of people, like I said, in their fourth year at IIT used to start preparing for IIM and CAT. And so I said, maybe this is what I want to do here. Maybe this is what I meant for. The other thing which helped, and we made up my mind, and actually, the IITs had a great system even back then. Even back then at IIT, it was mandatory for you to do for everyone to do at least 4 courses in humanities.
Oh wow!
Right, and because I decided at some point in time not to pursue engineering as a career, I did 8 of them, not 4 of them. Right?
The liberal arts.
And when I did those.
Do you remember which courses?
I remember. So I did a couple of courses in economics. I did a course in psychology. I did a course in English. I did a course in accounting. So because of those courses, I got exposed to some facets of management.
Okay.
And that's why I decided, maybe this is what I'm meant for. This is what I should be doing.
Achha.
So that's how I switched.
So I think the lesson is kind of really explore different domains, because you never know what resonates with you.
Yeah.
Okay. So you found that. Kind of moving into your professional life, when you were just at the cusp of entering the real world, how do you make decisions regarding? Did you think about which industry would really take off, or did you think more about the brand name of the organization? How did things play out for you?
See, again, I want to remind everyone who's watching this that this was the 90s. So there was no internet. We had no access to what we have, were completely uninformed about what was happening in the world. So when I went to IIM, it was a very standard system. You had a placement week after you finished your course, and you had companies coming to hire kids, and you had day 0 companies, day 1 companies, day 2 companies, and the best kids wanted to get hired by a day 0 company or a day 1 company, because those companies would pay the most, right? So but I think the choice people used to make in their head was whether they wanted to be in finance or marketing or consulting. Consulting was just starting as a career option.
But finance was established?
Finance was reasonably well established, but more corporate finance and the banking kind of jobs, not so much investment banking. Marketing was very big in those days. So the big companies on campus, the most admired companies on campus were the big banks. The MNC banks at that time, because Indian banks are not so big. And companies like Hindustan Lever and P&G and the likes, Colgate Palmolive, these kind of companies. Citibank of the world, the American Express Bank, the Bank of America. McKinsey had just started hiring at that time. So these are the companies we went for, yeah.
Got it.
And then after a while, you figure things out. That's how it was in those days.
Understood. Cutting to maybe today, I think one thing that a lot of people find so interesting about you is that, you're able to manage across so many diverse industries. I mean, you have Naukri, you have Jeevan Sathi, very different brands, different objectives. How do you kind of juggle those professional obligations? How do you context switch? I know that's something that a lot of young people
Between the various businesses or between...
Yeah, if you want to talk about both professional and personal, because this is something a lot of young people struggle with. Work-life harmony. You're pulled in so many different directions. You got your academics, extracurriculars. So can you give us some time management, work management yarn?
So listen, see
that we can act on.
Yeah, you see, all of us are juggling many balls at the same time. So it's work, family, friends, health. Health is something which I realized very late on.
But
I mean, and of course now kids have a lot of issues. But in my 40s, in my early 40s, my health started failing me. So I used to get my asthma came back, which I used to have asthma as a kid. Then it disappeared. Then it came back. I had a lot of back issues. Maybe a lot of the hard work we had to put in the early days of Naukri sort of led to all this. And so you're constantly juggling these balls, and it's a little tricky because you don't realize when you could drop one. And you can drop one of these balls at any point in time. So I think the first thing to sort of, which everybody should understand, is people should be aware, right? That these are the balls you're juggling, right? And if you're not careful, you can drop one of these balls. And before you realize it could be too late. So I think awareness is very, very important. Then, and there could be times when, something becomes more important. Like in the early days of Naukri, work was very, very important.
Right.
Because we were building something from scratch. It was not easy. I was lucky to have a lot of support at home. And then as with time, then you realize, like I said, in my early 40s, that my health became more important because I was starting to lose my health. So it's important to be aware of these things. It's very hard to do justice to all of them at the same time.
Okay.
Right? But I think one has to sort of, if one is conscious and one is mindful and one is aware, then one gets to know before it's too late that things are not going as planned.
I think that's helpful because I think the way we sometimes think is, need to think about all 5 things at once. But you're saying that, maybe in this stage of my life, this is more important. I'm going to give more time and energy here, and then maybe make up for it a little bit later. Got it.
It's very, sounds great, but it's not as if you can say, 20% of my time to this and 20% of my time to this and 20% of my time to this. Like at work also, you mentioned the businesses we are in. There are times when I have to spend a lot of time on a business which may be struggling at that time. And that requires a lot of attention. And then once you fix things, you move on and you do something else. And then you come back to it only if you're required, sort of, right? So it's a bit of... but it's not as if, since I'm running 5 businesses, 20% of the time to this business, 20% of the time to this business. So I don't operate like that. I don't find that very effective.
But what's your escalation matrix? So you've got 5 different businesses. How do you decide, there's an issue, I'm going to delegate this, or this will probably resolve itself, or, I need to get involved. How do you know when that point is that you need to dedicate your own time and effort?
Yeah. So you have to be focused on the bigger picture, right? You have to have the bigger goal in mind all the time, on which this is where we are headed. These are the 2 or 3 things we need to get right. And as long as things are moving in the right direction, it's okay, right? It's okay if it takes 3 more months. It's okay if it moves sideways for a while. But as long as you're moving in the right direction, it's fine. And you would want to delegate more and more so that your time gets released to do more things. And you sort of constantly, and there's a trade-off here because sometimes you feel that if I do it, I can do it faster if I do it myself. But if I have to hire people, then I have to first train them, and then they have to come up to speed and so on. But as long as things are moving in the right direction, you let it be, right? You should be able to pick up the signals when things are going south quickly. So you have to sort of be aware of that. So how do you, for example, in our business, like during COVID, for 2 years we were not at the workplace, and we were not in the market also. We didn't know what was happening, right? And people were operating from home. It's very easy to miss a few things when that happens, when something like that happens, right? Your competition may move ahead and you may not even get to know. Right? You may, because you're not in the market, you're not looking at data, you're not meeting customers, you're not talking to people, right? So I think it's important that you are, you're always, your antenna is always up, right?
Got it.
You have a bigger understanding of what's happening on the ground, in the market. You get have a sense of the big picture. And if things start going south, you should get to know early.
And you get to know early by having your finger on the pulse and talking to customers. What are some other channels you've established to pick up some of these early warning signs?
Yeah. So we are a large company now. We have 5,000 people. So we have a big HR department. So that's a very important function to invest in. They are my eyes and ears in many ways because they work with all the people in the company. So if something going wrong in the company, you get to know through the HR team. We also do surveys from time to time to understand if everything's okay inside the company. Then in the market, you have to, like I said, you have to be in the market. You have to constantly be. So for example, how do you get a sense of what's happening in the market? One, if you're meeting customers, you get to know. Right? Some of our best ideas have come from customers. Right? We have a small M&A team. So we are constantly meeting startups so that we can invest in them or acquire them. So when you meet startups, you know what's happening, right? Because they could be working on something new and disruptive, which customers may not even understand, right? But the startup guys know. Because like, for example, Chat GPT today, right? Customers may not fully appreciate the power of Chat GPT, right? But a lot of startups could be working on what they can potentially do with Chat GPT. Right? So if you're in touch with the startup world, you get a sense of what's happening in that world.
Got it.
So stuff like this. So you have to be like, you have to have your eyes and ears open.
Understood. So even within the organization, with customers, but also startups and others in the space. Lovely. Bring it to young people. So if I know there are a lot of young people who are looking to start their own companies, they want to join the startup world. They've got their own dynamic ideas. What would be some advice you would give to a 22, 25-year-old who really wants to build something that lasts as you have?
So I always tell people 3 or 4 things. See, one is there's a lot of people want to start companies and do stuff, but very few end up actually doing, because there's a very big step between sort of, a lot of people want to do stuff, they have ideas and they have lots of ideas, but they never take the first step. And so I think that's a very hard thing to do. So my advice to people who want to start companies is first start. That's because most people don't end up doing that, right? Of course, you may want to get some experience behind your belt. You may want to start at the right time. You want to start when you have a good idea, right? You don't start without an idea, right? So yes, all those things are important, but you have to start, right? Then the other thing I tell people is that you have to understand that it takes time. Right. So if you think you're going to be sort of, because you have a great idea, you'll end up building a company in a couple of years and you'll become rich and famous, that's not going to happen. Right. That happens to maybe 1 in a million people.
When you started Naukri, how much time transpired between your starting Naukri? You mentioned that, the early years were tough. So starting and really having that validation from the market, like, oh, this is going to be big. How many years transpired for you?
So actually, when we started, the world was very different. Like I said, even when we started, the startup world was also very different. There was not enough funding available. Nobody was doing startups. So we just wanted to build a small business. We were not thinking of building a unicorn at that time. And when we wrote our first business plan for ICICI Ventures, we were doing 3 lakhs a month at that time, and we said we'll do 20 crores in 5 years. And they were like, this is not aggressive enough. And we said, listen, even this is going to be very hard for us to do because this sounds like a lot. And we can't see how we're going to get there, right? And if we get there, we think it'll be a great achievement. So we were not out there to build a unicorn. We were not out there to sort of build a large company. We wanted to build a small, profitable business so that we don't so that we didn't have to go back to working, for another company. That was our goal, and that was our objective at that limited objective at that time.
This is so interesting because like what you hear from from a lot of coaches and gurus online is think big, imagine the unicorn, the decacorn, but you're saying just really focus on year by year, making things profitable, building a sound foundation, and then things.
And absolutely, and I've seen so many companies and so many good ideas. I've seen so many accidents happen because companies were just too aggressive, and they became aggressive because there was easy money available.
But isn't aggression important, or how do you draw the line between aggression, like good aggression? I don't know what you would call it. Maybe dynamism, and impatient aggression. Do you have any?
So dynamism is great, right? So once we figured out the right model for ourselves, we were very aggressive in the field, right? In the early years of Naukri also, once we got our product market fit right, once we figured that we had the right formula, within no time we expanded. I remember from 0 offices to maybe 30 sales offices, from 0 salespeople to 400 salespeople, because we figured we had got something right, but we did it the right way. Right? I see too many companies starting too many businesses without building a strong foundation, without building a strong core. So if your core business is profitable, doing well, growing, you're a leader, you built a brand, and then you get into other areas, it's fine. Right, but without getting your core right, because you have access to capital, because you have resources, you start doing too many things, and just to build a valuation is not a great idea. And I've seen many accidents happen when people think like that.
I think this is great advice, not just for startup founders, but for any individual. Like you have to really think about what is your personal or human brand.
Yeah.
What can you do better than anyone else? What's your core competency, and not spread yourself too thin, essentially. Lovely. We're talking a lot about the professional angle. What about the personal? Maybe right now, how do you structure your day from the time you wake up to the time you fall asleep? And how do you optimize and maximize your output in all spheres of life?
So firstly, I don't think about maximizing output. Okay.
And thus you do.
Right. So after I got that health scare, I started focusing on my health. And as a result of that, I started getting up early in the morning. So for the last few years, I become an early riser now.
How early? Like 5, 6?
Sometimes I get up at 4 a.m. also.
Oh my God.
But I'm usually
a common theme that's coming up.
But I'm usually
kids wake up early.
Yes. But I'm usually up by 5:36, right?
Okay. Wow.
And it's also a good time because nobody else is up in the house at that time, and I get a lot done in those 1 or 2 hours.
But what do you do in these early morning hours?
So I first prepare myself a good cup of tea. I love drinking tea, and then I usually get onto my WhatsApp and email and some work related stuff. I spend an hour, I send out some emails, mostly the long ones in the morning, right? And I'm done with all this by maybe 6:30, and then I nowadays I play tennis, so it's something I picked up in the last few months.
So like 5:30 to 6:30, you do these emails, and then
I do my emails, and then around 6:30 I sort of go for a game of tennis. 6:30, 7, or if not tennis, I go for a run, or do some work out at home. So an hour of stuff like this, whenever possible, and then after that, the morning paper and stuff like that. I am normally at work by 9:30 in the morning, and at work it is a lot of meetings. Nowadays, because we have a lot of people, we have management. We've hired a lot of good people, bright people who are brighter than me. I keep telling myself that if I was to appear for an interview in Quest today, I may not get hired. So we've had such. So at work, it's a lot of meetings. Internal meetings, sometimes external meetings, board meetings, stuff like that. I'm also involved in a couple of philanthropic initiatives.
Oh, lovely.
So, I'm one of the founders and trustees of Ashoka University. I'm a founder and trustee of a new university we're setting up in Mohali called Plaksha University. So I spent some time on Plaksha nowadays because it's new and upcoming. So that takes up some time during the week. And then once I get back home after from work, which is normally quite early, so it's not as if I work 80-hour weeks, right? I'm back by 6:30, 7. Then it's what time with at home. Of course, people at home don't agree. They think I'm on the phone even after I get back from work. But it's mostly, I like to believe that it's time I spend with the family. Weekends are mostly chilled out, especially Sundays. Saturdays I may still have one or two external meetings. But that's how it is. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Understood. Looking back at the past 30 years or so, what would you say are perhaps the 3 most significant decisions you've made?
We touched upon some of them. One, see the career decision, right? Education, what sort of business to be in. I decided to sort of do a startup early on, and I think it just changed the trajectory. I mean, it could have gone wrong.
How did you build the courage to take that leap?
So it's a long story. So after my IIM, I went to work for Hindustan Lever, and I was there for 3.5 years. And around that time, when this internet boom was beginning to sort of happen, and a lot of companies went public in the US, and there was some action in India also, and I had not heard of venture capital till then, and there was no venture capital in India till 1999, right? And suddenly, and I wanted to sort of, but I was an engineer. I had done engineering, so somewhere there was this thing at the back of my mind that maybe I should be doing something more high tech than what I do right now.
What were you doing at Hindustan?
So Hindustan Unilever is a fast-moving consumer goods company. So I was selling ice cream. Yeah.
Okay.
So at that time, it was a complex business. I learned a lot. And because, it perhaps gave me the courage to branch out also, because, Hindustan Unilever was a large company, but the ice cream division was a small division. And, they had basically acquired a lot of brands in India. And the ice cream supply chain was very different from what Hindustan Unilever did. And people in ice cream were left to sort of work out things for themselves. Right? So it was not a large company culture inside ice cream. It was a very small startup-ish sort of environment.
So in a sense, you got some of those startups.
Yeah, so I remember because we had acquired a lot of brands, I used to meet a lot of people who used to own those brands. So entrepreneurs, etc. Right? Like we acquired Quality. Quality was a big Indian brand. So the people who build Quality, I used to interact with them as a part of my job, because they still control the manufacturing. So, some of those things, I met a few interesting people. I was back in Delhi. I was looking to do something more high-tech. And then I met an internet entrepreneur at that time who was doing a company, back then. And I got an offer from him, job offer from him. And then that got me thinking. And then I met Sanjeev, my current partner. And he was sort of dabbling in the internet space. He was working part-time at a newspaper, also doing this on the side. So we decided to start an internet venture together. And then, I don't know, this is how sometimes things work. I mean, all this was happening by around mid-99. By late 99, there was an internet boom in India. Right? Because there was a dot-com boom in the US. And suddenly venture capital became available. And companies started chasing us to invest in us.
Oh man!
Right?
Timing was
perfect, and I quit my job, and we finally in February 2000 we decided to raise money. March 2000 we decided to raise money, and we raised money in May 2000, and by June the boom was over. There was a big bust in the US. All funding dried up. No company was, I think, funded in India for the next few years. That's how bad it was. It was a funding winter, for a long funding winter. So it's just one of those things. Yeah, I mean, so this decision, worked out for me. It was a big decision at that time. Marriage, I think, was the second big thing, or another big one, because I got married to somebody I met in Hindustan Lever. And around the time I was doing this startup. So I quit my job and got married at the same time, right? And luckily that has also worked out for me. And I think a third thing which also happened at the same time was my decision to move back to Delhi. Because when I was in Hindustan Lever, for a while...
You were in Mumbai?
Yeah, I was in Mumbai for some time. I was in Bangalore for some time. And then I was like, maybe I need to go back to Delhi. And because I was in Delhi and I was at home with my parents, it was just easier. It was just easier. So this decision to stay back in Delhi, to stay back in India, was also, I think, also played a big role, because if had it been on my own in Bombay, where it was actually very hard. I worked in Bombay. It was very hard to work in Bombay for me, because I had to travel by train, 3-4 hours a day in the train, and then you have to go home and make your own arrangements for everything, right? So I think these three things. So where you work, which city you end up working in, okay, who you marry, and what career you choose, I think matter.
Wait, I'm just thinking that kind of lines up with your businesses, Naukri, Jeevan Saathi, whom you marry.
There's no connection, but there's no connection. But these are the important things in life,
Right.
So I keep telling people inside the company also.
And education, shiksha. Okay.
Yeah. So the categories we are in as businesses are very high involvement categories. Right, so which course you decide to pursue, which college you go to, can make a big difference. Right? And therefore, we try and give people all the information so to help them make a better decision. Where you end up working can make a huge difference. Right? Your first job, your first boss, can leave a huge impression on you.
What do you think young people should keep in mind in terms of their first job? What should they do in order to gain the skills you think will be critical in the upcoming decades?
So no, I've become a big believer in this whole in this ikigai principle. I don't know if you may have read about.
Yes.
Right. So I did not believe. I mean, now I believe at least that it is very important for people to do stuff they're good at, and to do stuff they like doing. Right? Because otherwise, it's very hard to sustain for a long time. And life is a marathon. Like I said, nothing gets built in 2 or 3 years. Even if you're in a regular job, it takes 10 years to get somewhere, right? So if you don't like what you do, and if you're not good at it, you will not get too far, right? One reason why I think I gave up computer science, because I saw so many people around me who were better than me, and I was like, maybe I'll never be as good as them, right? I think that, and I think so if you are excited about what you do, if you're passionate about what you do, if you want to learn more and more about what you do because that excites you, you'll go far. So that's the one thing. I think the other thing which people need to keep in mind is they need to be where the future is going to be, not where it was. Right? So, and I think we got lucky because we bet on the internet. And if we had worked with the same kind of passion in the textile industry, for example, I don't think we would have gotten anywhere in life. Right, because we were in the right place at the right time. Internet was beginning to happen. We jumped on,
which is part of the ikigai framework. That's circle 3. What makes money now and
makes money. You can make money in many places. But I think it's important to bet on what is going to be. I mean, I can say this with hindsight, with the benefit of hindsight. What is going to be? So today, you would rather join an electric vehicle company than a regular automotive manufacturer, what I mean? Because maybe that's where the future is, right? So you would rather work in solar energy or nuclear energy than in fossil fuel. Right? So that's where the future is likely to be. You would rather work on the digital, and than in sort of.
Reminds me of this quote by the best ice hockey player Wayne Gretzky, and he won so many championships, and people asked him, what's your secret? And he says, I escaped to where the puck will be. Not where the puck is right now. He always had that anticipation. Where's it going to be?
Yes. And now I think there's a lot of information available, right? Which was not available back then. There are, of course, there's a lot of noise also. And you have to be able to pick up the signals, right? But it's very easy to get confused. But I think in general, you have to acquire the skills of the future, and you have to try and be where the world is going to be a few years from now.
Got it. Any other advice you would give to, or maybe another way to ask is, what is it that you know now that you wish you knew when you were 20?
So,
and not just on a professional level, but even in terms of beliefs and values you've cultivated that you think more young people should imbibe.
So, see, when I was 20, I had a very limited view of the world. And I think a lot of youngsters, even today, feel that if they're not doing well at whatever they're doing right now, they don't have a future. I don't think that's true, right? I think the world will give you many opportunities. And so if you're not doing well at something today, it doesn't mean that's the end of the road. It's a rapidly changing world. There are, many more opportunities than there were earlier. So I don't think people should get disheartened and disillusioned if they're not doing well at this point in time, right? You might have taken a wrong call. You might, like I was in the wrong course. Right? That's what I think, at least, right? Then I got it right. Things changed, right? So I think that's something people should understand, that there'll be many opportunities. So don't get too stressed.
That's something that has kept coming up.
Yeah. and grades matter, but it's not as if they're the only thing that matter, right? So many other things matter as well.
And what are some of those other things?
So, for example, I'm very fond of telling people this, that the technical skills may get you a job, but they won't get you promoted. So unless and until you acquire the softer skills required to succeed in life, you won't do well in life, right? So I, for example, am a big believer in integrity. So you should honor your commitments. You should be sincere about what you do. You should keep your promises. You should, build relationships, build partnerships. These things matter, right? You need to have good people skills, right, to succeed in life. So unless and until you invest in sort of acquiring these softer skills as well, after a while you can hit a ceiling.
Got it. Okay. I think that's really helpful. So moving on to the rapid fire, we love doing this. What's one value you hold really dear? I know you mentioned integrity. Anything else you would say?
Hard work. I do believe that, and I've seen it also many times, that hard work beats talent if talent does not work hard. So I think it's, you may be very good, you may be very smart, you may be very bright, but you still have to work hard.
Got it. Lovely. What's one business you wish you had invested in earlier?
I had the opportunity to buy more InfoEdge stock early on because there were some founders, etc. Early guys who wanted to exit, but I didn't have money at that time, and I wasn't even sure of how the company would do. So I passed, and I know somebody who bought, and he's done really well for himself.
You've done great too. Okay, excellence is blank.
So excellence is hard. It's rare. It's undervalued.
Undervalued? Why do you say that?
See, Google was not the first search engine, right? But they were the best. Many people sort of feel, at least even in the startup world, that if you're early, if you're first, you make it, right? But time and again, I've seen that people who do a better job make it in the long run. I mean, so even Facebook was not the first social networking platform. Apple was not the first phone company, right? But they were just, and they were just too good at whatever they did. They were brilliant. They were excellent.
Got it. And this goes back to your point about patience, right? And it takes time to build something.
Yeah, I think one, it takes time. Two, I think it's also whether you believe in it or not. And I'm not saying that it should be the strategy every time, right? Because often I see myself telling people at work also, listen, let's follow the 80-20 principle, right? 20% of the effort will get you 80% of the result, which works up to a point. But if you really want to become great, then you have to get the remaining 20% as well. Which is hard.
But how do you know when, okay, we got to get this done. Yeah. Now, is it that 80-20 or is it that 99-1? How do you differentiate between the two?
So I think if you don't have competition, then you can get away with 80-20. Okay? But if it's a competitive space, it's not enough.
Got it.
And after a while, you have competition.
Yeah, so you can keep up with, 80-20 will last you.
80-20 will sort of get you ahead, give you time to sort of get other things right. But after a while, you
got to up your game. Yeah. Understood. Lovely. What is the most used app on your phone? WhatsApp. After that, anything else?
Twitter.
Okay. Interesting. And finally, we love to end with this one. What's one change you would love to see in 2035, like about a decade from now, either in the world or in India specifically?
Lots of things, but you asked for one. So I'll be a little selfish here. I would like to see more livable cities. Right? I think this, and on many dimensions. I think there's too much social tension. There's a lot of inequity. There's a lot of, traffic pollution. A lot of things going wrong with our cities in India, at least. And I think India is going to urbanize more and more with time. So it's about time we fix some of these issues.
Wow. Hope to see that.
Yeah.
Hitesh, thank you so much for all your time. Really enjoyed this.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.